Hello. Good evening, everyone. So basically, this is my first time to go live and air while studying physiology. So here's what I learned in chapter 33 of Boron. So the first topic is about functional anatomy of the kidney. So here, the first bullet topic is the kidneys are paired and retroperitoneal organs with vascular and epithelial elements. So first of all, kidney is not normally paired. Um, I have not read that there are cases of multiple kidneys like beyond three. I'm saying beyond three. And hold on. Okay, so again, our kidney is paired organ. I have not read nor encountered kidneys beyond two. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that most of the kidneys of human, or not normally, there are only two kidneys, and it's bean shaped. Okay, so the kidney on the right must be lower than the left. Okay, so the right kidney is lower in location than the left. Okay, the reason for that is because of the liver. So basically, the liver is the reason why the kidney on the right is lower than the left kidney. Okay, so aside from that, our kidney is a retroperitoneal organ, which means that it's outside the peritoneum, outside the peritoneum. Okay, and our kidney is located in the 12th thoracic vertebra, down to the third lumbar vertebra. Okay, so it's from the T12 down to the L3. Okay, so that's T12 down to the L3. Okay, so approximately our kidney is only zero point 0.5 or less than 0.5% of the body weight. But of course, men has bigger surface area than women. Thus, the kidney of men is much heavier than women. To be specific, in men, the kidney weighs around 125 to 170 grams, okay, for each kidney. That's for each kidney. While for women, each kidney weighs 115 to 155. So again, it's 125 to 170 for men, while okay, 115 to 155 grams per kidney in women. Okay, so aside from that, our kidney is composed of, or there is a hilus or hilum. A hilum is a structure where our renal artery, nerve, and yeah, the renal artery and the nerve enter. So it's the port of entry of the renal artery and the nerve. Okay, at the same time, it's the port of exit of the renal vein, of course, and at the same time, the ureter. Okay, so the ureter and at the same time, the lymphatics. So it's the port of exit of renal vein, the ureter, and the lymphatics. Okay, so the hilum or hilus opens into a shallow space called renal sinuses. So this renal sinuses is where the urine enters from the collecting duct. Okay, so it's basically the temporary storage of urine inside the kidney. Okay, so in the renal sinuses. So what's in the renal sinuses? We have the renal pelvis, the major and minor calyx. Okay, so the major and minor calyx. Okay, so our kidney going distal. So our kidney is composed of a cortex and a medulla. Okay, so basically in the cortex, it's called granular cortex or granular outer region. So it is termed as granular outer region because of the different structures that can be found in the cortex. Okay, so what can be found in the cortex? First, we have the glomerulus, okay, or the glomeruli, and at the same time, microscopic tuft of capillaries, okay, that's present in the glomerulus. Okay, and at the same time, there is also a large number of highly convoluted epithelial structures in the form of renal tubule. So what are again present in the renal cortex? We have glomerulus, and renal tubules. Okay, so a capillary tuft, okay, the capillary tuft, there are normally 8 capillary tufts. Um, the 8 capillary tufts or 8 coils of capillaries, that's what we call capillary tuft, is present in each glomerulus. Okay, so for each glomerulus, again, there are 8 capillary tufts. Okay, so aside from that, we can find renal tubule in the cortex. Okay, so what can be found in the medulla? In the medulla, it lacks glomerulus. There is no glomerulus in the medulla. But what we can find in the medulla are the loop of Henle. Okay, so the loop of Henle. Now, our loop of Henle, there are 3 different structures in the loop of Henle. So first, we have um, the thin descending loop of Henle, the thin ascending loop of Henle, and the last one will be the thick ascending loop of Henle. Okay, so let me repeat that one. So we have in the medulla, we can find there the thin descending loop of Henle, the thin ascending loop of Henle, and the thick ascending loop of Henle. Okay, so okay, so aside from that, the medulla is subdivided into 8 to 18 conical renal pyramids. So 8 to 18 conical renal pyramids whose base face the cortical medullary border. So it looks like a pyramid, but the tip of the pyramid faces towards the medulla. Okay? So it looks like a parachute. Okay, the parachute, the base of the parachute, or the pointed part of the parachute uh, faces towards the medulla. Okay, so again, it's 8 to 18 conical renal pyramids. So I'm wondering who is this one person here viewing in my live. I'm supposed to be doing this one alone, but I think I made it public. Can you comment in the Can you comment in the comment section? I can't I can't be able to see if or who identify who is this one person here. Okay, so let me continue. So again, that's the first topic. The first topic is kidneys are paired and it is retroperitoneal, which means that it's outside the peritoneum. Okay, it's outside the peritoneum. And at the same time, of course, it's composed of blood vessel and epithelial elements. So the epithelial elements here primarily are the renal tubules. Okay, and the vascular elements here are renal arteries down to the glomerular capillary tuft. Okay, so next is kidneys have very high blood flow and glomerular capillaries flanked by afferent and efferent arteriole. Okay, so let us trace the flow of renal arteries from from the hilum up to the renal cortex. Okay, so um, it's very simple. So you have to remember that the renal artery, okay, the renal artery came from the abdominal aorta, okay? So the renal artery came from the abdominal aorta will enter the hilum of the kidney or the hilus, okay? So in the hilus, that's where your renal artery enters. It will bifurcate or divide into 2 divisions. We have anterior and posterior renal artery. Okay, so this anterior and posterior renal artery will become interlobar artery. Okay, again, interlobar artery. Okay, so that's when they enter already the cortex or the renal cortex. Okay, so that's interlobar artery. So after becoming an interlobar artery, it will become an arcuate artery. Okay, so yeah, an arcuate artery. Again, it's from the renal artery. It will bifurcate into anterior and posterior renal artery, and then it will continue into interlobar artery, and then it will continue again into an arcuate artery. Okay, so now what happens to the arcuate artery? This time, the arcuate artery will enter the renal cortex. Okay, so ibig sabihin, uh, the interlobar artery can also be found in the medulla region. Okay? While your arcuate artery is the artery that can be found, okay, that or the artery that enters the cortex. Okay? So it looks like this. So your interlobar artery and then the arcuate artery going towards the transverse kumbaga section. Okay? So interlobar artery, arcuate artery, and then it will move upward towards the renal cortex. Okay, so your arcuate artery will become interlobular artery. Okay, so interlobar artery, arcuate artery, and then interlobular artery. Okay, so this interlobular artery now will give rise to the afferent arteriole. Okay, so the the interlobular artery will give rise into the afferent arteriole. Okay, so if you can just imagine, no, we have interlobar artery, arcuate artery, and then going towards the cortex, we have interlobular artery, and then it will give rise to the afferent arteriole, and then of course it will form a capillary tuft. Okay, how many capillary tuft? Again, I mentioned earlier, it's 8. So you will just write there figure of 8. No, so for you to be able to remember that there are 8 capillary tuft in the glomerulus. So I just mentioned now the 8 capillary tuft will form the glomerulus. Okay, and these 8 capillary tuft, guys, will be enclosed by the visceral, okay, the visceral layer of Bowman's capsule. Okay, so the visceral layer of Bowman's capsule. Again, the glomerular capillary tuft will be enclosed or covered by the visceral layer of the Bowman's capsule. Okay, so our Bowman's capsule, by the way, has 3 layers. So the first one is the visceral layer, the one that is in contact with the glomerulus. Okay, and then in between that, or in the outside, we have the parietal layer of the Bowman's capsule. So we have visceral layer, parietal layer, and again, what's behind the visceral layer of Bowman's capsule? That's the glomerulus. So we have here glomerulus, 8 capillary tufts covered by the visceral layer of Bowman's capsule, and then it is covered by, on the outside or in the exterior, it is covered by the parietal layer of Bowman's capsule. So what do we call to the space in between the parietal layer and the visceral layer of Bowman's capsule? We call that Bowman's space. Okay, we call that Bowman's space. Okay, so what's the purpose of Bowman's space? Bowman's space is the temporary storage site of urine in the glomerulus. Okay, so again, temporary site of storage of urine in the glomerulus is our Bowman's space. Okay, so we are done with the glomerulus already. Of course, the blood that is entering the glomerulus or the capillary tuft will be exiting, no, through the efferent arteriole. So how do I remember this one, or how can we easily remember this one? If you will just remember efferent as exit, of course, it will come after the afferent. Okay? So again, I usually remember efferent as letter E, exit. Okay? So exit efferent, which means that that is the blood vessel wherein the blood coming from the glomerulus exits. Okay? So the blood coming from the glomerulus exits through the efferent arteriole. Okay? So the question now, what will happen to the efferent arteriole? Okay, so the efferent arteriole will go back to the circulation. Okay, and what is that circulation? That includes peritubular capillaries, or basically it's the general circulation. Okay, so okay, I think that's it for the kidneys of a very high blood flow, glomerular, flanked by efferent and efferent arteriole. Okay, just remember, guys, again, renal artery bifurcates or divides into anterior and posterior renal artery, and then it will continue as interlobar artery, and it will continue as arcuate artery, and then it will go towards the cortex as interlobular artery. Okay, so the interlobular artery will give rise to the afferent arteriole. Okay, and this afferent arteriole will form capillary tufts TUFTS, okay, capillary tufts. So the capillary tufts will be how many coils? There are 8. Okay, so these capillary tufts will basically um, filter the urine. Okay, so the filter the blood rather to form a urine. Okay, so the blood coming from the glomerulus will exit the glomerulus through the efferent arteriole. Okay, and then it will go back to the general circulation. Okay, and again, I mentioned the one that covers the glomerulus or the capillary tuft in the glomerulus are your visceral Bowman's capsule, visceral layer of the Bowman's capsule. And again, on the outside, it is covered by the parietal layer of Bowman's capsule, which is connected to the proximal convoluted tubule. I repeat, the parietal layer of Bowman's capsule is connected towards the proximal convoluted tubule. And again, what's in the space, or what do we call to the space in between the Bowman's capsule parietal layer and the visceral layer? We call that Bowman's space. That is where the urine is temporarily stored after being filtered by the glomerulus. Okay, or after blood is being filtered by the glomerulus. So aside from that, okay, let's proceed now to the third topic. The third topic is the functional unit of kidney is the nephron. Okay, so what is a nephron? A nephron, okay, a nephron, again, guys, is composed of glomerulus, blood vessel, and the renal tubules. Okay, so our renal tubules, guys, that is where the reabsorption and secretion happens. Okay, so in the glomerulus, filtration. But in the renal tubule, secretion and reabsorption happens. Okay, so that is exactly the nephron. A nephron is composed again of renal tubule, glomerulus, and blood vessel. The blood vessel there, we have the afferent and the efferent arteriole. Okay, so aside from that, okay, I mentioned this one already. Okay. Okay. By the way, guys, if you can remember, glomerulus is somehow communicating with the afferent and efferent arteriole, and the afferent and efferent arteriole is also communicating to the macula densa present in the collecting duct. Okay, so again, I repeat, macula densa is present in the collecting duct. Okay, so this macula densa communicates with the afferent and efferent arteriole through the structure we call, hold on, through the structure we call juxtaglomerular apparatus. Okay, so juxtaglomerular apparatus. I repeat, okay, so let me correct, guys, the macula densa is present in the thick ascending limb or distal tubule. Okay, thick ascending limb or distal convoluted tubule, or DCT. Okay, so I haven't mentioned the renal tubules yet, right? So the renal tubules are composed of, number 1, proximal convoluted tubule. Number 2, I mentioned descending loop of Henle and ascending loop of Henle. Okay, so let me repeat that one. The renal tubules are as follows. We have the proximal convoluted tubule. After the proximal convoluted tubule, we have the descending loop of Henle, the thin one. And then after that will be the thin ascending loop of Henle. And then the last one will be the thick ascending loop of Henle. But that is for the loop of Henle alone. But of course, connected to your thick ascending loop of Henle is the distal convoluted tubule. Okay, the distal convoluted tubule. Now, I have mentioned earlier that macula densa is present in the distal convoluted tubule. And the macula densa there communicates with the afferent and efferent arteriole through the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Of course, guys, since we mentioned that juxtaglomerular apparatus is the name of that thing that communicates the afferent arteriole towards the macula densa, we can also find there the juxtaglomerular cells. In particular, juxtaglomerular cells can be found in the afferent and efferent arteriole. Okay, so in the blood vessel, okay, juxtaglomerular cells are in contact with the afferent and efferent arteriole. Okay, so aside from that, guys, what's the significance of this? Later, when we talk about renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system or the RAAS, we will be recalling again the location of the macula densa and the juxtaglomerular cells. Okay? So I repeat, the distal convoluted tubule, that is where your macula densa is present, will communicate, the macula densa will communicate with the afferent and efferent arteriole, or the afferent and the efferent arteriole, to the, through the juxtaglomerular apparatus. And of course, we mentioned its juxtaglomerular apparatus. We can find there the juxtaglomerular cells. Okay, we can find there the juxtaglomerular cells. Okay, because juxtaglomerular cells are the ones that releases renin. Okay, it releases renin. Okay, now the question is, what is the function of macula densa? The macula densa, remember, it communicates with the afferent and efferent arteriole. Okay, so the macula densa signals, or I mean senses the changes in blood pressure. Okay, so it's the macula densa that senses the changes in blood pressure. So when macula densa senses the changes in blood pressure, it will communicate with the juxtaglomerular cells to release renin. Specifically, if blood pressure is decreased, the macula densa will contract, or it will communicate with your juxtaglomerular cells to release renin. Okay. Okay, so we have here the okay, the structure of the nephron. Okay, figure 33-3, development of the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule. So, in the development of the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule, we have here loose mesenchyme, which will attach to the bud. Okay, ano yung bud na yun? What bud is that? Epithelial ureter bud. Okay, it's the epithelial ureter bud. Okay, and then it will condense to form the S-shaped segment or the S-shaped renal tubule. Okay, so this renal tubule will continue to elongate. Okay, so it will continue to elongate, and then what supplies the layer of cell? It's the mesenchymal cells. I repeat, the mesenchymal cells will attach to the epithelial ureter bud. So the ureter bud is like this. Okay, and the mesenchymal cells will attach to the ureter bud. So these mesenchymal cells will elongate the or will condense first. So they will condense first, or they will attach to each other, forming a condensed mesenchyme, and then eventually it will elongate the renal tubule. Okay, the renal tubule now will become an S-shaped segment, and this time it will continue to elongate, elongate, elongate up until such time it will form an invagination. So that invagination there is the glomerulus. Okay, or the Bowman's capsule, rather, the Bowman's capsule. Okay, so after tubule elongation, the podocytes will fold, forming the Bowman's capsule and eventually the glomerulus. Okay, so the mature glomerulus, guys, and Bowman's capsule, um, I mean, the glomerulus is composed of capillary tuft. So in our capillary tuft, of course, we can see their endothelial cells. Endothelial cells has fenestration in that area. The fenestration is the reason why urine can be, or blood can be filtered and urine can be formed. I repeat, the fenestration is the reason why blood is filtered or can be filtered in the glomerulus and urine can be formed. Aside from the fenestrated membrane of the endothelial cells or the blood vessel, aside from that, another structure that helps in filtering the blood or the urine in itself are the foot processes of the podocytes. Remember, I mentioned earlier, in the capillary tuft, it is covered by the that's the visceral layer of the podocytes. Glomerulus, capillary tuft, it is covered by the visceral layer of the podocytes, okay, or in the Bowman's capsule. So we have here a podocyte, the mother podocyte. The fingers here, or my fingers here, are the foot processes of the podocyte. Okay, it will look like this, like this. So the blood coming from the glomerulus will actually exit through the fenestration in the endothelial cell, and it will be filtered by the uh, foot processes of the podocyte. Okay, before it enters the Bowman space. Okay, the Bowman space where the urine is temporarily stored. Okay, so that is how our urine is being produced. Thank you guys for watching. This is actually my first stream explaining what I have understood from the book. If you can find or if you can detect something that is not that does not sound correct to you, please leave your comment in the comment section. Thank you. Good night.